All right, thank you. Hope you guys can hear me. I'm going to try this earpiece microphone, and I'm not a singer, even though I look like it. So you folks down there, I'm sorry I'm a little short. They don't have me on the stand up here, but I'll try to make it where you can all see me. So, and with me today is Allison Dellwo, and she's filling in for Marguerite Austin, our supervisor, who could not be here. She got pulled away for an important meeting. So, how many of you know about the RCO in the room? Okay, quite a few. How many have never heard of us? Let's talk about. All right, you guys can leave the room. So, we have been around a long time. So, we were created by Initiative 215. We were originally called the Interagency Committee for Outdoor Recreation, or known as the IAC. How many of you had a grant with us when we were the IAC? Great. You guys get bonus points. All right, good. And so our name was changed to better represent all the tasks and stuff that had come to us from the legislature over the years. We have 23 grant programs and categories. There's 64 employees as of, I think like next week we're hiring our last person. We've kind of been in a hire frenzy, people leaving, transitioning, moving around the last year or so. 32 of those staff have only worked at the RCO in their state service. I'm one of them. And 3 staff members have 86 years of combined experience. That would be myself with 25 plus years. My supervisor, Marguerite Austin, and Scott Chapman, our IT PRISM person who used to be a grant manager. The previous record was held by Lorinda Anderson, who had 39 years at the RCO, her whole career, and retired a year and a half ago. So yeah, a lot of people stay there. It's a great place to work, as you can tell. What are we about? We're about outdoor recreation. You know, now we've added conservation into that. We have salmon recovery, and we're also, we house the Invasive Species Council, so we're kind of a little bit of everything. But we're mostly outdoor recreation, and salmon recovery is the bulk of it. So we always talk about our office as the salmon heads are on one side of the cubicle city, and the recreation folks are on the other side of the cubicle city, and in the middle sit the big bosses with office with doors on them. Kind of how we are. So, and some of us have been there long enough to have a window seat. I have. So, we've got a lot of investments across the state, about 1.8 million since the start of it. We got 8,000 projects plus we've got money into. You can kind of see the numbers, 2.7 billion invested. It's a lot for a small state agency. We're probably one of the most efficient agencies operating on a really low overhead. We get a small percentage of the funds from different things that's operating, but we are probably the most efficient. And we have one of the biggest capital budgets. I think it was the 4th largest capital budget in the state besides DOT. So that's pretty impressive when you think about all the state agencies. These are you guys. And I looked at that and I think there might be 5 or 6 of you that I haven't worked with in all the years I've been there, but just about everybody on that list. I'm guessing most of you are represented in the room today, except for maybe a couple of the big ones. You guys don't like your big brothers, right? I'm not going to mention any names, but so if you work or want to get a grant with us now, this is the smiling faces, and I have my eyes closed because I couldn't stand the camera person. No, it was the sun was in my eyes. So these are all the folks that are currently on staff there, and some of you know Kim Sellers, been there a while. Myself, Dan Hawes has been there quite a while, and then it would be Carl Jacobs. And then we have all these newbies. So Allison's in the room today, and then we've got Beth, and we've got Brian, Jesse, Deanna, and our newest admin, Lon, who is excellent. She's doing a great job getting our agreements out. We're so glad that we have her. If you want to know where we're kind of our territory, we have both counties and we have agencies. And so a lot of folks have different assignments. So some of you look up there and go, wow, Dan is oops, sorry about that. Dan is a slacker with one county. So just, no, I'm not saying nothing about Snohomish being a hard one to manage and a lot of work, but actually Dan has the whole Department of Natural Resources. He has all the Eastern Washington Gun Range grants, and he has 90 active projects statewide that he manages, 90. And so Allison, who's in the room with me, of course you can see she only has a small handful of those hard to manage counties, the islands, the San Juans. Like, they're the worst ever to get out there, you know. You gotta ride a ferry boat, you gotta plan your trips, you gotta put up with all that beautiful scenery and whales. I don't know, but I don't know why anybody would want that county. But, and then so if you look at Kim, you know, another slacker, 2 of them. But Kim also has all the farmland programs, she has the forest land programs, and she has all Department of Fish and Wildlife statewide lands, acquisitions. Myself, I'm kind of a slacker with only a few counties on the coastal areas here, but I've got all Department of Fish and Wildlife recreation sites, and I've got all the Western Washington gun ranges. So, you know, Jesse and Brian have a lot of Forest Service along with the counties. Allison G, she has a great gig. She was in Olympia for a while, and then her husband's job took him over to Pullman, little town of Colton, and we said, you do such a great job, we need to keep you, you can have a satellite office. And so she has all those folks and works out of her home on the east side. So I'm trying to figure out how to get that gig, you know, but haven't done it yet. So anyway, and then Beth out here on the north part, and she's got the central ones, and then Deanne has Seattle, King County, and a bunch of other stuff. So on a sense of workload, you know, if you look at the map, it doesn't really reflect how much work you really have in the office because you just got so many things going on. So we have a lot of stuff. I think I have 50 active grants. Brian has 70. Jesse has 60 something. So it just kind of bounces around. We have a lot going on. That's the projects that we're managing actively that are, you know, under construction, doing stuff, sending us bills, wanting us to send money back to them. So we stay really busy with our staff. So here's the kind of grants we have available for the ports. Typically, we'll see almost everything based on the stars. Most of you are probably familiar with our boating facilities program. That's what most of you are coming in for. But some of you have had grants in the past with aquatic lands, and a couple have had them in local parks and WWRP. The boating infrastructure, the federal program, Allison's going to talk about that later. That one's probably the second most popular grant recently in the last few years. But as you can see, if any of you guys want to do a gun range on port property, you know, you can come and get a grant for that too if you're eligible. So kind of a quick glance at some historic funding for the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account, money from DNR, shellfish lease tide lands. This last round we had, keep pressing the button. We had about, you know, 8.8 million or 6.6 million available there. And, you know, grants are for acquisition, combination, restoration, development, if you want to do that. That typically, we see that for non-motorized launches and habitat restoration stuff. The WWRP, a lot of you folks don't come in for those, but if you wanted to, it's probably the local parks category you'd probably be looking at, or maybe a water access grant, most likely, that would fit kind of in your wheelhouse as a port, you know, would be the ones you'd be doing. And then, you know, grant limits of development 500,000 and $1 million for combination, or $1 million for acquisition, and 50% match unless, well, that's for, we have some reduced rates. And then if you want to know the breakdown on WRP, it's up there. The total amount of money that comes in the office gets split down by percentages, and then it splits down farther and farther and breaks down to what happens. It's kind of a formula that's set in statute. The boating facilities funding, quick look at the historical funding for the local category, what you guys would be eligible in, the local side. Last round, about almost $9 million. We expect to have even more next round. This is probably the one you'd be interested in if you haven't done one with us. You know, $1 million for development, acquisition, or combination. You can do planning grants. You know, if you have a real tough one, come in and get a planning grant first. And then in the BIG, she'll talk more about that in a little while, but we kind of have 2 tiers that people are applying for. And, tier 1, which is the smaller ones, which is state managed, and then the tier 2, which go to the national competition. And we've really done pretty well doing that. Here's what you might want to know. Historically, 229 grants. There's I can figure for the all of you ports. And you can see where the numbers are, pretty much the boating facilities program. And that makes sense. It was the longest, it's been started historic of the agency, and a lot of good things. But we have a couple of other ones. And then right now, we have 18 active grants with you folks. So probably those that got grants in 2000, should be 16 and 18. There might be a couple lingering 14 grants And if you're some of those, don't raise your hand because you're kind of in trouble with us for taking so long. So, and 3 active grants in the, whoops, what happened? All right. I should know how to do these better. And then it's kind of some historic numbers again, just, you know, the total amounts of money coming out for the ports, that's quite a bit of money. Oh, this thing fell down, that's why. That might be better, you might be able to hear me better now. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know how those guys sing with these things, they don't fall off your head when you're moving all the time. So anyway, there's kind of a list of all the numbers. If you like numbers, they're kind of boring though, actually. So here's what you guys want to know, right? When can you apply for another grant? How many of you think you're going to apply for a grant next year in 2020? How many? Okay. How many of you have a current grant now that's active from the 18 round? Okay. How many of you have a 16 grant that's you're still working on closing out with this? Ooh, good job. I like to see that. So what's the date you guys are most interested in? November 1st of 2020 probably for BFP. And maybe May 1st for the other ones. Pay attention to the bottom of the screen for planning eligibility. How many of you know whether or not you're planning eligible to apply for a grant in one or more of our categories? How many of you are working on a comprehensive outdoor recreation plan now to make yourself eligible to apply to the RCO coming up? A couple of you? Good, good. So you can check on our website to see if your current plan keeps you eligible. They're good for 6 years. We also have a planning specialist person in our office that you can talk to, and she'll help you get going. If you are thinking about it, all of you that raise your hand and for the next round, you might want to check and make sure you're eligible to apply. Get started on your plan now because you don't want to get caught off guard. March is going to come up pretty fast, and you have to do some work to get your plan updated and do it. So don't wait around. Put that on your to-do list. It's important. Otherwise, you may not be eligible. The good news is if you're making progress and you've done a lot of work and you're really close to March 1st and you're not going to make it, but you're really close and you've really done a good job, you can really beg and really ask and plead and get on your knees and bring us milkshakes or something. We might extend you a little bit if you're working on it. So we do give you a little flexibility, but don't push that date out too far. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the boating program and then give you a few things about it in case you don't know. To show you some pretty pictures of things that we've funded in the past. Some of you might know those spots. Might have been there before. It might be one of your spots. Again, kind of some numbers. The last round of grants in 18, we only had 30 applications in the whole program. And what I didn't mention is that money that comes into that program, it gets split in half statutorily. So half goes to state agencies, half goes to local governments, of which you guys are eligible to apply for in the local category. So in 2016, we had 45 projects. We had way less in 18. We funded every project in the 2018 grant round, and you guys actually left some money on the table. First time. So everybody that applied and got in there got funded. So what's that tell you for 2020? Apply for it, get in there. You won't get the money if you're not in the pool. So yeah, it was unusual. And part of that stems from the fact that we've had a huge uptick in the amount of money coming into the program because of the increase in the fuel tax dollars, and then they lifted the lid on that for us. We used to be capped at a dollar amount, and they raised it up. So, you know, from 14 to 16, it almost doubled in money. You know, so that's really nice because it's really funding a lot more projects. And so last round, you can see there was 18 projects in the local side, and there was 12 on the state side. And the state agencies also left money on the table. They didn't. We funded everything in the state agency. Now, the good news, you know, for the local folks that came in and did that was you got all your stuff funded and you should be doing a good job of getting your stuff done. The bad news is we don't want to leave money on the table because then people see there's not a big need for it, and somebody in their wisdom in that big building that's across the street from us down there might think, oh, let's go grab some of that money to help pay for something else because RCO doesn't need it. It's better for us to have more people to make sure that money is really shown the need and it's safe. So if you want to see a graph, you can look at port districts and you can see that you were down in 2018 in applications. Cities were identical, and the counties, WDFW was lower, state parks was lower. We actually had a couple of tribes that applied last time. So the program, it's broken half the fund goes to state, half goes to local. You gotta come in person and see our faces a couple times and present to us, and you gotta have a comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. And when's the due date for that? March. Don't forget that, get your stuff going. You can do about anything you want with this, you know, as long as it's acquisition, development, restoration. You can do planning and design, you can do a combo grant. Grant limits again, $1 million. State agencies have no grant limit, they can ask for what they want. They can get more money if they bring a match. They don't bring matches to their side. And then for you guys, you gotta bring 25%. And you're competing against the criteria, not really competing against yourselves. And you get a little extra bonus point if you bring more money, which helps you get funded. And so with that, I'm gonna turn the mic over to Allison, and she's gonna talk to you about the boating infrastructure. You guys have any questions so far? Or you wanna wait till the end to do it? Boating questions? Okay, we'll do it all at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. So again, my name is Allison Dellwo, thank you. And not to be confused with Marguerite Austin, who is in the program. She couldn't be here today, like Rory said. So I was brought in from the bench, and I'm excited to be here. So the Boating Infrastructure Grant Program provides funding to develop and renovate boating facilities targeting guest recreational boats that are 26 feet and larger. So I think a big program is big boats, just very straightforward to remember. So it's a federal funding program managed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it's within the Department of the Interior. And so the service ultimately receives and approves all the grants, but we manage it as RCO. So just a little outline of what the funding comes from. So the funding does come in part from the Sport Fish Restoration and Boating Trust Fund, and that includes revenue from excise taxes on sport fishing equipment, import duties. So that just kind of gives you an outline of where all of those funding sources come from. And about the program, so eligible applicants are you all, so local agencies. Also, tribes are eligible applicants, nonprofits, private facility operators, which is very unique to our programs, as you might know, and state agencies. And so you can apply for up to 75% in grant funds, but you do have to provide that 25% match, as with the BFP program. And our grant limits are up to $192,086. And for tier 2, it's a larger amount, so it's just under 1.5 million. And how about those eligible activities? So there are opportunities, again, for those large boats, for moorage, docks, floats, slips, piers, buoys, utilities, breakwaters, and upland support amenities. So those might be restrooms, showers, laundry, facilities. And I will note that dredging and maintenance is actually a new addition as of a couple of years ago. So those are available to be included, but I do believe they have to be part of a larger project within that grant period. So be sure to read our manual for some of those details, and you can always reach out to us if you have questions of how it all fits together. And proration is required, so making sure that you're prorating out anything that wouldn't be eligible. And again, we will help you through that, so you'll put that in your application of saying what % is being utilized and how it fits within the grant. And the side note is launch facilities are not eligible within this program. So unlike many of our other programs where you have to go in person and present and develop a PowerPoint, these are all written evaluations. So you can stay behind your computer and send it on in. It's all through our PRISM database, as many of you are very familiar with PRISM. And so one thing I will say is that we are doing some updates to PRISM. And don't be alarmed, it's hopefully all good things that will make it easier for you. And so instead of requiring a lot of attachments, we are putting the questions within PRISM, so within the application itself. So I'm looking at Todd, who just did an application recently for Friday Harbor, and he had to put a lot of attachments in there, so I hope it'll be easier and more user-friendly moving forward. And so, as I mentioned, there were 2 tiers. So there's the smaller tier, which is a state competition, so it goes to our reviewers here in the state. And then the tier 2, it skips that phase and goes all the way to the national competition. And an important thing to note is that we do have a compliance period. And so that's for the useful life of the entire project, and it's based on what was funded in that useful life. And so, as some of you know, we do come out and we do compliance visits. So we do come out and look at the final project when it's finished. Again, I'll use Todd as an example. I was just there at Friday Harbor to look at their activity float, some things that they had just finished, and then within about 5 years or so, we'll come back out and visit up until that useful life has been met.
Allison?
Yes.
How do you identify what the useful life is? Let's just talk about a dock that you might say is 40 years.
Yeah, so that's actually a question within the application, so you'll have to say, I think you have to, Rory might know more about where you get that information, but it's a question that you answer, so we base it on that.
So if it extends past 40 years, it no longer has to be in compliance?
Yeah, correct. So we have a useful life, and we've been looking at what the federal manual is and our manuals, and there's some question about, how long does a dock last? How long does a float, how long does a boat launch? Well, not a launch in this category, but other things, and so I don't think the feds have given us an exact number. Floats are always 10 years, and, big docks are 20 years, and gangways are 50 years, or whatever, I think it's so subjective to some degree in those things, and we ask you to put that in there, and I think we measure it against some other criteria. I can't remember exactly what those details are, because I don't do DSE programs, but it's some kind of a reasonable number based on, Office of Financial Management budget and the federal, how long things should last. But it's, I don't know, I can't tell you if we have a chart exactly what that is. It's built into the application thing and figure it out, but it's somewhat reasonable. So you're right, after, let's just say a dock is worth 20 years in the salt environment. After that point, then you're out of, we still would hope that you would keep something there or replace it, come back into the grant and replace it, but if it goes away or is destroyed or something and it's past the useful life, you're basically off the hook for compliance and having it in there. But, yeah.
And for each grant cycle, we do recommend, I know a lot of you have applied many times and you're familiar with our criteria and our policies, but we do make updates, and especially with the federal programs, it kind of depends on any changes that they make. And so for this next round that we have for BIG, which starts May 1st is when the pre-application is due, we have you enter kind of that initial information, and then we get the information from the feds knowing what that application looks like. So there are little kind of different steps for that federal funding. But we do put in the beginning of our manuals, we try to do an at-a-glance section which outlines what has changed in the last couple of years. Like maybe, I know in the last 2018 manual we noted that maintenance is now allowed in certain cases, that there's been some changes to the evaluation criteria. So always double checking to make sure that you're revisiting that and knowing what changes might have been made. So this last year, we had 4 applications that came in this last July, requesting $537,000. And our boating program advisory committee evaluates those projects. And so like Rory said earlier, with BFP, apply so you can get the funding. So we definitely want to see more applications coming in the door in future rounds. So tier 2, we had 1 application that came in for $1.4 million, and so that is currently being processed. Both of these categories are still in process with the feds getting that approval. So they went to evaluation in September, and so hopefully by next July, they'll have the awards ready to go. And just in general, here is a map that shows all of our funded projects from over the years for boating. You can see it covers most of the state, so wherever there is water, I would guess. But that just gives you a snapshot of what is happening. So, as Rory mentioned, we have a whole crew of us that cover the state. And so, depending on the county or program, we're here to help you. And so we don't necessarily need you to write down all our numbers. It's available on our website too, but by all means, if you see your person, you can write down their cell number. We don't have desk phones anymore. That's a big change for us. And so all of our phones go to our cell phone, which we usually have on our desk for all intents and purposes, but we can bring it with us out into the field so we can better assist you. And there's our website and our office number you can always reach us at. And don't be left high and dry. Apply in 2020. Does anyone have any questions for Rory or myself? Yes.
One of your slides said the launch facility is not eligible. Can you explain that to me?
Launch facilities not eligible.
And the
So that was
BIG.
for BIG?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's because that's for the larger boats that are 26 feet and larger. So the BFP program does provide that kind of support, but not the boating infrastructure grant. So we do have grants for that type of thing, but not that particular program.
Yeah, we don't know why the feds decided to do that. My guess is they must not know that lots of people in the Pacific Northwest have 28, 30, 32-foot aluminum boats with triple axle trailers that launch at the launches all the time. But they must not do that in the East Coast or somewhere when they invented the rules. So we don't know. There's some rules they do back there.
Big
And,
boats get full once in a while.
oh yeah, lots of boats. And something we forgot to tell you is that the BIG and the BFP grants are eligible for matching each other, and that's a great way for you to leverage your money and do that. And it's a little bit complicated in the billing portions and the funding side of things, but it is a possibility. And one of your folks that's here who's done really well at that is Rebecca at the Port of Willapa Harbor, has matched 2 BIG grants to 2 BFP grants in the past. So it is possible. It's a little more work for you and for the grant manager, but it's a great way to leverage your money and to get stuff done. So yeah, great.
So for planning purposes, if you made the May 1st deadlines and got your application in, then what happens after that and when could you potentially get funded? Plan to do your project?
Yes, so the question was about the timeline. So if you put it in...
I turned it off. I don't know. We'll just share the microphone.
Turning it back on.
I turned it off.
Okay, I turn this back on. We seem to be safe. So the question was about the timeline. So if you turn in your information May 1st, you'd go through the application process. So typically it takes about a year to a year and a half for the funds to become available, depending on the program. So you do have to plan well in advance and know, okay, this is our long-term plan. This is when we'll be getting the funding.
Should these projects be shovel-ready then, or, I guess, kind of answer my own question, you have funds for planning as well?
We do. You want to?
How does that work?
No, just hand me the mic. Just hand me the mic. Turned it off.
I turned it off.
Yeah. Just when you turn it off? Where's the button? Okay. The question about planning, should you be shovel ready? Well, you want to know what's going on, but we do have an option for a planning grant. And the planning grant was designed because a lot of folks are getting money and then going out and trying to get permits and design it and draw it up once they had the money to bill us. And they couldn't get their permits and their drawings done in time. And we kind of want you to get it done. From the time you get a grant till you get done and should have your project is about 3.5 years. The most we can let the money go is 4 years. And so we'd never write a grant agreement for much over 3 years, unless you really twist our arm to go 3 years in a couple of months. But we really want it done, and the legislature wants it done under 4 years. So if you can come in and ask for a planning grant, and then the planning grant has the expectation you will have construction documents, bid documents ready to go, and you'll have permits in hand, then theoretically, you would apply for a development grant the next round, and in one of the questions there, readiness to proceed, you would say, I have my permits in hand, I'm ready to go, we just need the money. Theoretically, you should score better and have a better chance of getting the money. There's no guarantee, but it, if things go the way it should work, you would have a pretty good chance of getting your money and doing that. But the process it takes, if you don't apply for BFP funds till November of 20, then we'll get, if everything goes well, legislature gives us the authority for the funds. We sit through the session in 21, July 1st of 21, we have the authority to write agreements. It takes us a month to 2 months if we get the authority, July 1, like this last summer we did. We're still finishing agreements right now. We have 350 agreements to do on the rec side. So it takes a while to get those out the door from each of us. And then you get a grant, goes back to you, your agency signs it, and that might take you a week, it might take you 2 months because you gotta wait to go to city council, the mayor's office, or the port commissioner's meeting, whatever. The lawyers have to look at it. You sign it, get it back to us, so we activate it. Then you can go out and start digging in the ground and doing stuff. You do have the option though, we allow pre-agreement costs, so architectural engineering services and things you could do ahead of time, pay for them, and then you could bill us for them after your grant is active. So, but it really is about a 1.5 year cycle from the BFP round. So, yeah, the question is shovel ready? It'd be ideal if you knew it and had your drawings in place, but if you didn't, then you could do the planning grant, or if you think you're pretty fast at getting permits and doing it. But historically, we've seen Army Corps permits take 1 year to 1.5 years for folks to get them once they knew they were doing. Cultural resources can tie you up sometimes, take a little bit of time. So, realistically, what we're seeing is boating grants are 1 year to 1.5 years, and once they get a grant with us, it's 1 year, 1.5 years before they even start doing any work in the ground. It's 1.5 years to getting permits, getting stuff ready, lining up all your bids, and then actually, ready to go out and do construction. Go ahead.
Are consultants allowed to be paid out of a planning grant?
You can hire consultants and pay anything that's eligible like that. You can hire them and pay them out of that. So yeah, that's, not very many folks do their own drawing and engineering work. State agencies do their own because they have their own engineers, but sometimes they also sub it out to consultants. So yeah.
So 2 questions, one at a time. The first one is, one of the early slides showed historic funding, and 2012, 2014, 2018 was averaging about $6 million a year, but in 2016 it was $1 million. So does that indicate a one-off, or is that some indication of future variability of historic funding?
So I think you're referring to the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account, ALEA, and that was a drop. And the reason for that was because the legislature has lately been looking at the ALEA account as a way to help prop up general fund money or other things. And there was something that happened, and I can't remember what it was. They took it out for something, and they were going to fill it back in behind, and they didn't completely fill it back in. But the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account was for lack of a better word, it was borrowed against or something leveraged, and they backfilled some of that in another way. But yeah, but normally it's they don't mess with that. But you never know what goes on. I mean, I think 3 cycles ago they came in and swept some money out of the BFP funds to help pay for law enforcement for Department of Fish and Wildlife when they were short funded. Then they promised to put it back in, and it never got backfilled. But I know there was a lot of the lobbying groups on the Association of, or the boating folks that lobby on behalf of boaters and stuff, worked pretty hard on trying to do that, but it didn't happen. That was kind of why we don't want to see money sitting in that account unused. That's why we want to see lots of applications come in. Kind of helps show the need for it so they don't look at it. Okay. But that's when things were kind of short.
Right.
That was kind of a one-off, but you never know with the legislature what they're going to do, right?
And the second question is, recognizing that most of this is going to be marine facilities, but given the number of ports that own airports and industrial parks in the state, is there some history or at least some potential eligibility and/or for bike paths, walkways, grant funding through industrial parks around airports, things along those lines? Is that untapped potential, or?
That's a great question, and it's really talking about other things, upland facilities around the ports, property, and airports, and Could you do trails and other types of things? And yeah, you probably could come into the Washington Wildlife Recreation Program local parks category, or you could even come into the, I believe you're eligible in the trails, which I didn't mention. They're very competitive, and so I don't know how well you would do. But if you looked at the criteria and seen how you could compare yourself against that, you could make a run at that and do it. But it would have to be, some caveats to that would be it'd have to be, trails typically are connected to other trails or they're part of a linear trail system, but it could be that that trail connects town through port property down to a viewpoint or something. Or maybe the airport's the viewpoint, take off and run, I don't know. And if you could make the case for that in the trails category, you could maybe score. It's competitive. And the local parks, for example, last round had 91 projects. They asked for $130 million or something. We only funded 18 or 19 projects out of 91. So pretty competitive. But you could make the case for it. You know, and what I would see more likely in that would be maybe, you know, an RV park that supports the marina, upland facilities. But yeah, in the boating category, you can certainly do bathrooms, showers, facilities. Once in a while, a playground if it serves the boaters, but not if it serves the whole park. So it just kind of depends. But talk to your grant manager about it and see if it fits. And then look at the competition, look at the criteria, and you really want to see how you measure against the criteria. Can you score in the criteria? Because that's really what it's about, if your project. How about any more questions?
Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
having
all.
us.